Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Trinidad and Tobago's top cop calls for either the suspension of constitutional rights or a state of emergency. This story takes the lead in our 942nd edition of Caribbean Perspective for Tuesday, 15th September 2020. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. Suspend constitutional rights or call a state of emergency. This is what Police Commissioner Gary Griffith says the state of Trinidad and Tobago would have to do in order for the police to enforce the public health regulations to the expectation of the Prime Minister. Vanessa Cutting of TV6 News reports.
Can the public health regulations be applied to private property? The top cop maintains the answer is no. And he's particularly miffed by what he has interpreted as the Prime Minister alluding that the TTPS is not doing its job in this regard.
It's not for me to tell the Commissioner of Police who to arrest and who not to arrest or how to apply the law. But as Prime Minister, I could tell the Commissioner of Police that the law must apply to protect us in Trinidad and Tobago from those who are not prepared to listen.
Very hypocritical. It's all of a sudden has become a big concern for the police to take action if you see more than 5 people by a pool. But just a few weeks ago, people were dancing, wailing by the hundreds on music trucks during an election campaign, and there wasn't a concern, and they wanted the police to be flexible. Now we have a situation where you want the police to enforce a law that is not there.
The Commissioner is also taking to task members of the public who suggest that the TTPS discriminates based on class or race in its application of the law.
The Prime Minister has given the police laws to arrest persons if it is that you are from humble upbringing and you have to go to swim in an open beach. And there, those persons can be arrested. But we cannot arrest persons from if they have a pool and you have a fancy upbringing and you're rich, because we cannot go into those properties because we cannot infringe on the constitutional rights of persons on private property.
However, on Saturday, National Security Minister Stuart Young said this.
Section 133 of the Public Ordinance, the Public Health Ordinance, that allow the police service to intervene in circumstances where there's risk to other people's lives and risk especially in a situation that we're in the pandemic. So the police can intervene in those circumstances.
On April 11th, the TTPS also confirmed this via post to Twitter. But today, Griffith said, while Section 133 does allow for police to enter private property, that is where the power ends.
You cannot use that to state based on COVID, because you don't even know who has COVID and who does not have COVID. So you cannot use that about trying to save lives.
Griffith says the Prime Minister needs to be more careful in his pronouncements as he risks opening the proverbial can of worms.
He's alluding to the fact that what happened in Bayside, we should have arrested everyone. It means that every single person in this country who decides to have a luncheon today and they invite their family members, as soon as it gets more than 5, should the police have authority to go and arrest everybody in each household because you have more than 5 persons? When would it stop? So the fact of the matter is we need to be very careful what we want, be careful for what you want because you might get it. But at this time, we do not have that authority.
The top cop says ultimately, the police need the backing of sound legislation to efficiently execute their duties.
It has to go to Parliament to take away the constitutional rights of the citizens to give the police such authority or a state of emergency. If that is not done, I am not going to have my police be directed by any politician to do the wrong thing.
Vanessa Cutting, TV6 News.
Still from Port of Spain, the family of Frederick Burke has served the Minister of Health with a pre-action protocol letter requesting his medical records and an autopsy. TV6's Vanessa Cutting again reports.
If the family of deceased Frederick Burke has their way, it will be the first time an independent autopsy is done on a COVID fatality in this country. The Ministry of Health had long taken the position that autopsies would not be undertaken, as advised by the WHO. due to risk of COVID-19 transmission. However, attorney at law representing the Burke family, Richard Clark Wills, says that position cannot be absolute.
If there are those cases where the families have serious concerns over the events leading up to someone's death and then their subsequent death, surely they deserve an answer.
For the Burke family, that answer can only come by way of his medical records and an autopsy, as their lawyer says he was in good spirits on Friday morning and reported that he was doing well.
So it's a business partner. And he told that business partner that they had administered an injection to his groin. And shortly thereafter, he complained of feeling unwell. Very unwell.
Questioned as to why there are suspicions swirling around Mr. Burke's death, with more than 50 other persons also having died from COVID-19, the attorney had this to say.
We all know that Mr. Burke was not Joe Average. We know that. We also know that there were certain individuals that seem to have had a vendetta against him. And anyone who denies that would have to be living in under a rock somewhere.
Mr. Clark Wills is asking that persons not turn the matter into a political football.
I'm not quite into conspiracy theories, and I'm not in any way blaming any particular individual for the events that happened here. I'm saying, clearly, let us look at the evidence as it presents itself in an objective, open manner.
Contacted for comment, the minister advised that he would not be speaking to any legal matters. Renessa Cutting, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Moving further afield to Central America, Said Musa, a two-time Prime Minister of Belize, retires from elective politics. More in this News 5 Belize report.
Belizeans first again. B.O.B. 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 Que viva el Partido Unión del Pueblo. Que viva Belize. Thank you very much. Have a good time.
That was a young and charismatic Said Musa at the People's United Party National Convention. Musa is a gargantuan public figure who began his political career pre-independence and fought and won many battles along the way, showing the strength and savvy of a man who has dominated political life for decades. He represented the 4th Georgia Division for 10 terms and held various portfolios such as sports, education, economic development, attorney general, and foreign affairs. Musa announced his departure from political life on Tuesday. The two-time Prime Minister suffered a stroke in May, from which he is still recovering.
This was a personal decision by the former party leader and Prime Minister. As we all know, in May he had an unfortunate health issue. He had a slight stroke. And so he has been having, he has not gotten to his own self. And he has improved considerably. As you saw in the pictures yesterday, he looks a lot stronger. But I think he felt that it is time for him to retire, not to resign from electoral politics. It is obvious that it would have been very difficult for him to run in those conditions. So he's doing the right thing. And at the same time, giving the party, not him, he's giving the party an opportunity to choose another candidate that can best represent the people of Fort George and that can best deliver that seat for the People's United Party.
Prior to Musa delving into politics, Musa began making a name for himself in the late 1960s along with senior parliamentarian Michael Finnegan. Musa co-founded the ad hoc committee for the Truth About Vietnam. He picketed the showing of the Green Berets, an American film.
In the meantime, Belize's current Prime Minister Dean Barrow considers Musa's retirement as the end of an era.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry that it is illness that is obliging him to resign and or not to contest again. I am hoping that ultimately he will make a full recovery from the stroke and the affliction that's laid him low. So I certainly wish personally the best for him on the health front. In terms of his departure, it marks the end of an era. I go at the same time, so to that extent, we are still politically, in a way, doing our ultimate farewell dance together, so to speak. I have, of course, had some epic confrontations with Mr. Musa, some epic fights. We've debated each other fiercely, and sometimes, many times indeed, that debate in Parliament has been extremely contentious. But I will say this, on the personal level, Syed Musa has never been other than affable, than amiable. He's not somebody that one could ever accuse of being personal. Throughout the long time he's been in politics, I've never heard anybody make a complaint that he's malicious, that he's vindictive, that he's spiteful. Not at all. And as I said, I have known him for a long time before I got into politics as a lawyer, when we were both at the bar. And even in the early days of politics, though we were on different sides, I considered him a friend. Later on, the relationship, of course, soured politically.
The United States Secretary of State, Michael Pompeo, is due to make a 2-day visit to Guyana this week, a senior Guyana government official has confirmed. Permanent Secretary in the Foreign Ministry, Ambassador Audrey Jardine Waddell, told the online publication TheMarawaWaves.com that the visit is scheduled for September 17th and 18th. Pompeo was critical of the David Granger administration after the disputed March 2nd regional and general elections, and Washington threatened to impose stiffer sanctions on the government and other officials if the figures from the national vote recount were not used to determine and declare the results of the polls. TheMarawaWaves.com said the American Embassy spokeswoman did not immediately respond to queries about what is expected to be on the agenda of the Secretary of State's visit to Guyana, but Pompeo is expected to sign a number of agreements with President Dr. Irfan Ali. Granger has said that in April, his administration had turned down a request from Washington to relay the Voice of America VOA radio broadcasts to Venezuela, which is preparing to hold elections. The United States called for the removal of the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from office, supporting instead the opposition leader Juan Guaido, but Maduro had the backing of China, Russia and Cuba. Pompeo is also likely to meet with the Caribbean Community CARICOM Secretary General Erwin LaRocque. The 15-member regional grouping has already indicated that it adopted a position of non-interference and non-intervention in the internal affairs of the South American country.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.